Hello, everybody. I'm Chris Adams. Today, I wanted to talk to everyone about a topic that kind of interested me. That I saw this video online, and at first, when I saw this clip, it shocked me a little bit, and it took me aback. Then I looked at several of the comments on the clip, and some people threw me to Snopes, which I don't know if you know about Snopes, but they actually don't disprove as much as they think they do. They kind of admit it half heartedly while also saying, well, I mean, he didn't mean that, is mostly their argument when they can say something is false. They're not very accurate, and I don't know who fact checks them because I have a high reading comprehension. I always had. I've always had one. I was reading uh, very early in my life. So when I read Snopes, I can tell how they're twisting things to make an argument to say something is false. So that's what I felt like this might have been. But I wanted to give this clip a fair shake. So let me just play this clip for you very quickly, and then we'll kind of break it down with other examples.
Now, we put out a lot of carbon dioxide every year, over 26 billion tons. For each American, it's about 20 tons. For people in poor countries, it's less than 1 ton. It's an average about 5 tons for everyone on the planet. And somehow we have to make changes that will bring that down to zero. It's been constantly going up. It's only various economic changes that have even flattened it at all. So we have to go from rapidly rising to falling and falling all the way to zero. This equation has 4 factors, a little bit of multiplication. So you've got a thing on the left, CO2, that you want to get to zero. And that's going to be based on the number of people, the services each person's using on average, the energy on average for each service, and the CO2 being put out per unit of energy. So let's look at each one of these and see how we can get this down to zero. Probably one of these numbers is going to have to get pretty near to zero. That's back from high school algebra. But let's take a look. First, we've got population. The world today has 6.8 billion people. That's headed up to about 9 billion. Now, if we do a really great job on new vaccines, health care, reproductive health services, we could lower that by perhaps 10 or 15%. But there we see an increase of about 1.3.
So right there, when you first hear that clip, it sort of takes you back a bit, and I know people go, well, he didn't mean. Well, some people took it a few different ways. Some people said that, oh, he's using vaccines to control population. I don't think he means that because I've watched some other clips, and I want to be fair to his argument. His argument is, in order to reduce population, we make people healthier, and then they choose to have less children through abortion, family planning, or basically condoms and other things. Now, not a fan of abortion. I don't believe in it. I think it's wrong. But let me play another clip where he says something kind of similar. This is a long time ago on CNN. It's hard to find this clip in any good quality, but I found it okay enough.
$10 billion over the next 10 years to make it the year of the vaccines. What does that mean exactly?
Well, over this decade, we believe unbelievable progress can be made, both inventing new vaccines and making sure they get out to all the children who need them. We could cut the number of children who die every year from about 9 million to half of that if we have success on it. And the benefits there in terms of reducing sickness, reducing the population growth, it really allows the society a chance to take care of itself once you've made that intervention.
Now, that is in and of itself where the problem lies. Not necessarily the vaccine part. I think people put too much emphasis on that. But the part that I have a problem with is population control. He keeps talking about it, and he will talk about it more and more. He's talking about it in his mind. It's to help the planet, either poor people. It's either to help reduce CO2 emissions. And if you notice that little math he did, all of those led back to people being the problem. Now, when I came up in comedy, I would often hear jokes by a lot of my favorite comedians that said, oh, people are the problem. There's too many people. Kind of. Not in America. There's not too many people. And I would even say in other countries, yes, they have poverty, but I don't think you should extinguish life to fix one ill. just by killing more people. I think that's the wrong way to look at it. But let's look at his thoughts again on another population control question.
One of our most pressing issues is population growth. How do you expect this to be addressed?
Well, the population growth issue at the global level is not that daunting. That is, the population percentage-wise is growing slower today than in the past, and so it will actually peak out. The problem is that the population is growing the fastest where people are less able to deal with it. So it's in the very poorest places that you're going to have a tripling in population by 2050. And so their ability to feed, educate, provide jobs, stability, protect the environment in those locations mean they're faced with an almost impossible problem. Northern Nigeria, Yemen, Chad. And so what we need to do is take this aid generosity and this innovation and go into those places, offer the women better tools where they want to space birthing or have a smaller family size, and improve health, because it's amazingly, as children survive, parents feel like they'll have enough kids to support them in their old age, and so they choose to have less children. Niger right now, it's still 7 children per family, whereas in the richer countries, you're often at a stable point of which is 2.1 or even less. And so it's really an acute problem in a certain number of places, and we've got to make sure that we help out with the tools now so that they don't have an impossible situation later.
This sounds like a nice, friendlier version of the fewer child policy than China. It's like, no, we're not going to force it on you, but we're going to hopefully make you want to not have as many kids, which I just don't agree with. Now, I understand his points. I get that he's talking, well, there's so many people, there's poverty, but that's not factoring in the potential for those people to possibly invent their own solution out of their situation. That's saying, I know better, and I think that we should encourage you to have less kids. And who knows if any one of those kids might have come up with a solution that he couldn't even foresee, because they are on the ground in their situation and they can improve their own lives, and we don't need to intervene in order to do something that just sounds like it's bordering on eugenics. And I think this other clip, it just doesn't feel right to me, and I can't say that that's what he's doing. I don't believe. I hope he doesn't believe that. I think he believes he's doing good, but its unforeseeable consequences is something he's not factoring in to this argument.
The population of Africa is set to almost double by 2050, raising fears that progress in fighting poverty and disease will be reversed. So what can be done to ensure that poverty doesn't increase? And how can a disproportionately large youth population help drive progress? With me to discuss all of this and more is Bill Gates. Bill, are we at a turning point where regression is a real risk?
Well, first, the progress over the last several decades has been pretty amazing, both reducing childhood death, getting kids in school, getting agricultural productivity up, and reducing extreme poverty. But it's really Africa that still has a doubling in population to 2050, and probably another doubling to 2100, where you really have to do a good job if you're trying to get these extreme poverty rates down. So if we don't do better in investing in human capital in Africa, yes, the number of people in extreme poverty is actually going to go up.
Should the solution, or should more solutions be focused on slowing that growth? So, for example, increasing reproductive rights for women or spreading the access to contraceptives, because it seems that, is it correct that no amount of investment can really keep pace with that population growth?
What we do between now and 2050 with education, with economic growth, with health and nutrition, that'll really set the course for moderating the population growth between 2050 and 2100. But it's really a virtuous cycle, letting women have reproductive health tools that they want, educating girls, raising agricultural productivity, getting these malnutrition interventions on a much greater scale than we have today. Those are the things you would want to do anyway. It turns out that by doing those well, you also set the population growth rate coming down quite a bit. And so it just makes it that much more imperative that we invest in the human capital now, and so that the challenge of what under any scenario will be fairly high population growth, that you're able to benefit from all those young people making a big contribution to their country.
So is the fact that Africa has such a high proportion of youth population and within the context of this predicted growth, is that something that you think is a sort of optimistic statistic? I mean, is it a good thing that there's an opportunity here to sort of harness the power of those young people?
It's both an opportunity and a challenge, because the capacity to run the health systems well, to get the education system to have not only high attendance, but good learning outcomes as well. That's not going to be easy. If we don't make these investments, that youth bulge, will be a huge challenge, because they won't have the development, they won't have the economic opportunity that they deserve. So it's potentially an asset, but if we don't invest right, it could even be a liability.
So again, it's talking about controlling population through, anytime anyone says reproductive health, they are talking about either abortions, contraceptions, birth control pills, things of that nature. So they want to reduce, they want to even also, the way he's talking about it, he wants to change the mindset of the people to where they have enough wealth to want to self-regulate their own births, much like we do here in America. And again, it's a topic that makes me feel very uneasy. It just sounds like you're using poverty or environmentalism to control other people's lives because you think you know more than they do. And it just strikes me absolutely the wrong way. Here's one last clip.
It's obvious you're doing wonderful things to prevent deaths. You're a self-proclaimed optimist. Another view is that your charity is adding enormously to the problem of overpopulation in the world. Do you have an optimistic solution to that problem?
Okay, this is a very important question to get right, because it was absolutely key for me. When our foundation first started up, it was focused on reproductive health. That was the main thing we did, because I thought, population growth in poor countries is the biggest problem they face. You've got to help mothers who want to limit family size have the tools and education to do that. And I thought that's the only thing that really counts. Well, then I came across articles that showed that the key thing you can do to reduce population growth is actually improve health. And that sounds paradoxical. You think, okay, better health means more kids, not less kids. Well, in fact, what parents are doing is they're trying to have 2 kids survive to adulthood to take care of them. And so the more disease burden there is, the more kids they have to have that high probability. So there's a perfect correlation that as you improve health, within a half generation, the population growth rate goes down. In fact, Hans Rosling here at this conference, in 2 of my favorite speeches, actually showed that unbelievable correlation that population growth has gone down. Today, where is there high population growth? It's in the places with the worst health conditions, northern Nigeria, northern India. And so the 2 problems go exactly hand in hand. If we improve health rapidly, we will get the peak population to be as much as 1 billion below the current expected peak. That is about 8.3 billion versus 9.3.
So again, instead of saying let's invent ways to be able to feed these people, let's invent ways to. He's saying vaccines, in his mind, are the way to make them healthier. He's basically trying to play God in a way, but in the name of goodness. And I look at this and I think it feels like he can't foresee what he's actually doing. Now, I am all for helping people in other countries. I think that is a good thing. So he's trying to stop the spread of the disease. That is a good thing. Um, he, but in our own country, we were a country that was poor for most of our history, and we managed to pull ourselves up into a level of stability. Now, it took a while. I mean, it did take some time. Most people in America were living on the equivalent of less than $1 a day for most of our history, and they did have a lot of kids because, yes, a lot of them did die. And now we don't have as many kids, but some places still do, and I'm not comfortable with the idea of promoting reproductive health as his main thing instead of, again, invent ways to feed these people, invent new ways to provide shelter for these people, invent. You're this intelligent guy, and I feel like he's looking at it so analytically that it's almost cold in a way. Now, some people see it the opposite. Many people don't have the same objections I do with abortion. I think that abortion is morally wrong, and that is my main issue here. Yes, I understand that people also dying is wrong, but that one evil doesn't negate another evil, and that is my problem. Now, this is a very complicated issue, and I hope we can come to some kind of conclusion here. I'm not persuaded by his arguments, and I don't think if you 100% believe his arguments, I don't know if I would be able to persuade you to mine. But I think I'm trying to come at this rationally. When I first heard it, it sounded very, very weird. And now that I hear more of his arguments, I'm not convinced that it's still not a little strange. It just doesn't feel right. So thank you very much. I hope you all have a good night.